With this video, we are starting a video series where I explain the C programs for beginners. So we're gonna start with the basics, and with every program, we will increase the complexity. So now what we do here is we will write our very first program in C programming language. Generally, the first program that you write in any programming language is about writing some text on the screen, popularly the text "Hello World." And here we're gonna do that using the C programming language. So here what I have done is I have opened up the VS Code, and then I have opened a folder called as beginners programs, and inside this folder I'm going to create all the programs. So in order to write a C program, we need to have a file which will contain the C source code. So we will create that. I'm going to click on this new file, and I will call this file as hello world and then .c. .c is the extension for the files which will contain the code written using the C programming language. Now after that, if I hit the enter key, this file will be opened. Now when we talk about writing programs in any programming language, in our program we have to do certain things again and again. For example, displaying some text on the screen, taking the input from the user, adding the string values, finding the length of the string, etc, etc. All the programming languages provide the features which will help us to do all these things that we do again and again very easily. So in C programming language also, these features are available, and they are provided in the form of standard library. So this standard library contains some functions which will provide these functionality. A function is nothing but a group of statements which are given a specific name depending on the type of work they do. For example, we have a function called as printf, which is used for printing the text in a formatted way. So in our program, if you want to use all these built-in functionality, then we have to include these standard library files. And here in this program, what I want to do is I want to display some text on the screen. For that, I will include a file called as stdio.h. So this is a standard library file which contains the functionality for displaying some text on a screen, taking the input from the user, etc, etc. Now here this include is called as a preprocessor directive. By using these preprocessor directives, we can give instructions to a program called as preprocessor to do certain things. So here what we are saying is include this file called as stdio.h to our program. Why we are including this? Because we want to use the functionality this file provides, which is for printing some text on the screen. Okay. Now the next thing that we do here is we will have the entry point of our program. In our program, there should be an entry point where the execution will start. And in C programming language, this entry point is a function called as main. And in order to create that function, first we have to write int and then the name, which is main, followed by a pair of parentheses, and then followed by a pair of curly braces. Now here main is the name for a function. A function is nothing but a group of or a block of some statements. Now here this is the entry point. Now when we run this program, the execution will start from this main function. And before this main, we have something called as int, which means that this main function returns a value of type integer. And between these parentheses, if this main function takes any values in order to do something, then we can provide that. But in this case, it will not take any values. So kind of like the name for a group of statements, we can provide the values for this to work, and then it can return some value after performing some work. And after that, between these curly braces, we write these statements, and this curly braces will form a block. So here with this opening curly brace, we are saying this is the beginning of the block. And with this closing curly brace, we are saying this is the end of the block. So whatever the statements that we write between these curly braces will be a part of this block. And the name that we have given for this block is main. Okay. So now what we can do is we can use the functionality provided by this stdio.h, and we can display some text on the screen. And that functionality is called as printf. So this printf is a function. Just like the main that we have written here, this is also a function. It is a name for a group of statements which will perform the activity of displaying some text on the screen. Now here between these parentheses, we can write the value that we want to display on the screen. So here we will use double quotes and we will say hello world. So now here, if you look at this code, from this main function the execution starts, then we are using this printf function and we are displaying this text on the screen. So what we are doing is we are calling the group of statements which will do the work of displaying something on the screen, and we are saying display this text on the screen. Now here this hello world is called as a string value, and in C programming language the string values are written between the double quotes. Now after that, the next thing that we do is we will return some value, and for that we will use return 0. Now why we have this return 0? That's because here while defining this main function we said it will return an integer value, and here in order to return a value we use this return keyword, and in this case we are returning a value of 0. 0 here means this one ran without any issue. If you have any other number here, then those numbers can indicate a certain type of error. So by looking at that return value, we can kind of say whether this program runs successfully or some issue has occurred or not. Now this main is a special function in C, which is the entry point of our program. Now here in this C programming language, every statement has to be terminated by using a semicolon. So here you can see after this printf, we will have a semicolon, and after this return 0, we will have a semicolon. Every statement has to be ended with a semicolon. So this is an instruction which tells the computer to do something. It has to be ended here with a semicolon, indicating that that's the end of that instruction. So that's why we will have the semicolon in here. So that's it. This is the program that we have written in here. Now let us see how we can run this. I'm going to go to the top right section in VS Code, and then I'm going to click on this run C++ file. Now here I'm going to select the GCC compiler, and it will build the program and it will run this, and we will get to see the output in this terminal. And here we can see hello world. Now what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to display your name on the screen. Instead of the hello world, I want you guys to display your name, your friend's name, your cousin's name, your father's name, mother's name, whatever that you want to display. I want you guys to do that. Experiment with this code, try to do different things so that you can learn more. In the previous tutorial, we have seen how we can write a hello world program in C programming language. In this tutorial, we will see how we can write a program in order to take the user input and how we can display that on the screen. Now just to explain this, what we will do is we will write a program which will ask the user to enter his age, then we will read that value entered by the user, and then we will display that on the screen. So how we can do that? Now here what I have done is I have used the code that we have written in the previous tutorial. We have included this stdio.h header file, and then we have the entry point, that is the main function of our program. Now this stdio.h header file provides us some functionality, for example some functions to display some text on the screen, and also some functions in order to take the input from the user. So we're going to use the functionality from this stdio.h header file. So in this program, as I said before, we will ask the user to enter his name, and when the user provides a value, we need a place to store that, and for that we will use variables. Now the name that the user is going to enter will be a whole number. It will be of type integer, and that's why I will create a variable called as age, and I will store a value of 1 in this variable. Okay. Now the next thing that we can do is we can display a message asking the user to enter his age. For that we can use the printf function, and here in this printf function we will say enter your age. Okay. Now after seeing this message, the user will enter his age, but what we have to do is we have to read that input and we have to store that in this age variable. In C language, we can use a function called as scanf for that. You can think of this printf as print formatted. You can think this scanf as scan formatted. So it will scan for a formatted data and it will read that. So here the data that we want to read is of type integer. And for this scanf function, first we have to provide the format in which it has to scan for the input. And then we have to say where you have to store the read value. Now here, the data that we want to read is of type integer. And that's why in this double quotes, I will specify the format as %d. This %d is called as format specifier, which is used to specify the format of data. For example, here we are saying integer, and for that we use %d. And after that, we have to say where we want to store the read value. We want to store that in this age variable. And in the previous tutorial, we have discussed that the scanf is a function which will contain a group of statements which will perform the action of taking the input from the keyboard. But in this case, what we want to do is we want to store that input in this age variable. So what we are saying is scanf function, this is the memory location where we want to store the value that you have scanned or read from the keyboard or the user. In order to provide the memory address, we have to use this address of operator, which is denoted by this ampersand symbol. So it will be address of the variable age. What we are saying is we want you to store the data that you have read in this memory location, and that memory location is nothing but the memory location of this variable age. Okay. Now what happens after this function call is the age variable will get the value that the user has entered. Now the last thing that we can do here is we can display this on the screen. For that, we can again use the printf function. And here we will say your age is, and then I will have a colon, and then I will use %d, and then I will refer this age variable. So again here with this printf function, we are formatting the text that we want to display on the screen. And what I want to do is I want to say your age is, and then whatever the value that is present in this age variable, I want to display that. For that, we have to use the placeholders. And this placeholder right now I'm using here is for this integer type of data that is stored in this age variable. And for that, we use %d. Here, this %d is called as a format specifier, which is used for integer type of data. So I'm saying here, I want you to display this text, and then I have this placeholder for a value of type integer. And we say that by using this %d, and then we provide the value for this placeholder, which is the value present in this age variable. That's it. Now we save this program, and if I run this program, it will say enter your age. I'm going to enter my age. And after that, if I hit the enter key in my keyboard, it says your age is the value that you have entered. So what we have done, we have displayed a message on the screen, and then we have read the value that the user has entered, and then we have displayed that. Now here I want to talk about some of the mistakes that the beginners do. One of the main mistakes that a beginner does here is while specifying the memory address for this scanf function, they forget this address of operator, which is denoted by this ampersand symbol. They only write something like age. That is not valid because age is containing a value of 1. For this scanf function, we have to say this is the format in which you have to read the value, and this is the memory location where you have to save this value. If you only write age here, something like this, then it just means that we want to store that at the memory location 1, and that is not valid. What we want to do is we want to say read the data in this format and store that in this memory location, and that memory location in this particular example will be the address used for this variable age. And that's why we have to use this ampersand symbol. So this is the mistake the beginners make. While displaying the value using the printf, what we are saying, we want to display the value that is present in this variable age. And for that, we just provide the variable name just like this. Now this is the way these functions are designed. When you learn about the pass by value and pass by reference and how functions work, you will actually understand why we have to provide the address here for the scanf function. The scanf function has to modify the value which is defined in some other function. But for this printf function, it just have to display the value which will be copied. Now again, about this last part, if you don't understand, at this particular moment, it's absolutely fine. Just understand that with the scanf, you have to use address of operator, and with the printf, you don't have to do that. I want you to write a program where you read some other value. For example, write a program to read your weight and then display that on the screen. In this video, we will see how we can write a C program in order to create a very simple calculator. Now here what I have done is I have used the code from the previous tutorial, and what we will write is a very simple calculator where the user will enter the two numbers and then we will perform all the four operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, and we will display the result. Now here, in order to store the two values that will be entered by the user, what we do is we will use the variables of type double. So it's going to be double, and for storing the two numbers, I'm going to call the variables as num1 and num2. And after that, what we can do is we can use the printf function and we can ask the user to enter the two numbers. So I'm going to say enter number 1 and number 2, and then I will insert a new line. And after that, we can use the scanf function and we can read the input for num1 and num2. So it will be scanf. And now, since the values that we want to scan are of type double, we will use the format specifier %lf. And then after one number, let's have a space. And then we will specify another number. So the user will enter one number and then he will press the enter key or a space, and then he will enter the second number. And after that, where we want to store the read values, we want to store them in this num1 and num2. And with the scanf function, we have to provide the address of the variables where we want to store the values. Address of num1 and the address of num2. And this operator is called as the address of operator. Okay. So now what we have here is two numbers that are entered by the user. Next, what we do is we will perform the addition, subtraction, multiplication and division operations, and we will display the result. For that, we will directly use the printf function, and here we will format the output in such a way that it will display num1 plus num2 is equal to result. So here the format will be %lf space, and then I'm going to have the plus here and then a space and then %lf equal to %lf, and then we will insert a new line. So now here we have to provide the values for these placeholders. The first placeholder will get the value of num1, the second placeholder will get the value of num2, and for the third placeholder we have to perform the addition operation. So I will use a parenthesis in order to group this operation, and what we have to do is we have to perform num1 plus num2. So it will be num1 plus num2 like this. Okay, so num1 plus num2 is equal to the result of num1 plus num2. Now similarly, we have to do for subtraction, multiplication and division. So I will copy this, paste it in here. I will change the operator to minus, and then here we will perform num1 minus num2. And then I'm going to paste it one more time, and this time we will perform for multiplication, and this time it will be num1 multiplied by num2. And now the next thing that we have to do is we have to perform num1 divided by num2. But while performing the division, we have to make sure that the num2 is not 0. For that, we will have a check here. We will check if num2 is equal to 0, then it means that we can't perform the division operation because it will be a divide by 0 situation. For that, we will use the printf function in here, and we will say num2 is 0, so can't divide by 0. Okay. If the num2 is not 0, for that we will have the else block, and here we will perform num1 divided by num2. So we will paste the code that we had for this addition. Now we will change the operator to division, and here we will perform num1 divided by num2. A very simple program that we have written in here. Now the next thing that we do is we will save it and we will run this. So now it will say enter num1 and num2. I'm going to enter 10 space 30. And if I hit the enter key, it will display 10 plus 30 is equal to 40. Then 10 minus 30 is equal to minus 20. And then 10 multiplied by 30 is equal to 300. And then 10 divided by 30 is equal to 0.333. Now here the values are displayed with 6 decimal places. If you want to control that, then you can do that. For example, here with every number, we can say percentage dot to LF. Okay, we're gonna do this for all these printf statements, something like this. And then I will save this program and I will run this. Now this time I'm gonna enter, let us say num1 equal to 50.8 and num2 I'm gonna enter 0. If I hit the enter key, we have entered 50.8 and then 0. So 50.8 plus 0 is equal to same, then minus same value, then multiplication, it will be 0. And since the num2 is 0, it will say num2 is 0, so you can't divide by 0. Now here the variables are of type double, so while performing this comparison operation whether num2 is 0 or not, we can have 0.0. So in that way, we are comparing double with the double. Now the next thing that we do here is we will talk about the mistakes the beginners make. One thing is this divide by 0 situation, they don't check for that. The second one is if they have the comparison operator, instead of double equal to, that is for comparing, they use single equal to, which is for assignment. So this is one mistake the beginners make. And again, about the scanf function, we have talked about that in the previous tutorial. So now what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to add one more functionality, and that is for displaying the reminder value when we divide a number by another number. Add that part, and if you get any issue, then do let me know in the comment section. In this tutorial, we will see how we can write a C program to check whether a number is even number or odd number. Now the question is how we can say whether a number is even or odd. So in order to say whether a number is even or odd, what we do is we take the number and we divide it by 2 and we will check for the remainder value. If this remainder is 0, then it means that the number is even, else this number is odd. For example, let us say we have the number 8. What we do? We take this, we divide it by 2 and we check for the remainder value. So in this case, the remainder is 0. So we will say this number 8 is even. Similarly, if we have the number 7, when we divide it by 2, we get the remainder as a non-zero value, which is 1. And we will say this number 7 is odd number. Okay. Now the question is how we can get the remainder value when we divide a number by another number. For that, in C programming language, an operator is available and it is called as the modulus operator. This operator is denoted by this percentage symbol. So we're gonna see how we can use that. Now here in this program, what we do is first we will declare a variable of type integer and we will call it as number. And then we will ask the user to enter the number in order to check for even or odd. Now here I have displayed this particular message, and after seeing this message, the user will enter a number. I will use the scanf function and I will read that number. So it will be %d and I will store that in this number variable. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to find out the remainder value. Now here, in order to store the remainder value that we are going to calculate, I'm going to create another variable and I will call it as remainder and I will store a value of 0 in this. And then here we will calculate the remainder value. So what we have to do is we have to take this number and we have to divide it by 2 and then we have to find out the remainder value. For that we use this modulus operator. So we have to perform number modulus 2. So what it does is it takes the number, divides it by 2 and then it returns the remainder value. So we will store that result in this remainder variable. Okay. So now we know the remainder value. Now we can say whether the number is even or odd. So for that we will use the if conditional statement and we will check this remainder value. So whether the remainder variable is containing a value of 0. If it is so, then it means that the number is even number. So here I will use the printf function and I will say %d is even number. Else, if the reminder variable is not containing 0, then it means that the number is odd. So we will use the printf statement in here in this else block, and we will say %d is odd number. Now here I have to provide the values for these placeholders. So that will be the value present in this number variable. So it will be like this. And after that, I will save this program and I will run this. Enter a positive number to check for even or odd. I'm going to enter 3. And if I hit the enter key, it says 3 is odd number. I will run it one more time. And this time I'm going to enter, let us say 58. And it says 58 is even number. So now here, let us talk about the mistakes the beginners make. One of them is instead of this double equal to for comparing, they will use the single equal to, which is the assignment operator. And the second one is instead of this modulus operator, they use the division operator. So these are the two things that you have to be aware of. And I want you guys to make a modification to this program. I want you guys to write this program without using this reminder variable. You have to perform this calculation, which is nothing but this calculation to find out the reminder value. You have to do that in this if condition. So make that modification, post your code in the comment section. If you get any error, do let me know. In this video, we will see how we can write a C program to find the largest of two numbers. So we will have two numbers and we have to say which is the largest number. Now here in this program, we will have two integer types of variables. Let us say num1 and num2. And what we do is we will ask the user to enter these two numbers. So I'm going to use the printf in here and I will display the message as enter num1 and num2. The user will enter these numbers and we will read that by using the format specifier %d, and we will store that in this num1 and num2 variables. Okay, so now we have the two numbers and we have to say which is the largest number. For that, we can use the if conditional statement and we can perform the comparison. So we will have the if conditional statement and now we will check whether the num1 variable is containing a value which is greater than the num2 variable's value. So we will have the condition as if num1 is greater than num2. So in this case, what we can do is we can say num1 is greater than num2. So I'm going to say %d is greater than %d. So here we're going to display the values. So it will be num1 and num2. For example, here let us say the user is going to enter 10 and 5, then it will display 10 is greater than 5. Now what if we have num2 greater than the num1? For that we can have the else if. So in this else if, we can check for another condition. If this condition is not true, then only we will check for another condition. And in this case, it is whether this num2 is greater than num1. In that case, we can say %d is greater than %d, but this time we will display num2 first and then we will display num1. For example, if the user is going to enter, let us say 20 and 30, then since the second number is greater, we will display 30 is greater than 20. Okay. Now, what if the user enters the same values for both the numbers? For that, we will have the else block. So here we will come to this else block only if num1 is not greater than num2 and num2 is not greater than num1, which means both of them are equal. So here we will display something like this. So we're gonna say num1 is equal to num2. Okay, a simple program that we have written in here. And now what we do is we will save this and we will run this. So enter num1 and num2. I'm gonna enter 5 and 68. If I hit the enter key, it will display 68 is greater than 5. If you want, you guys can say num1 or num2, that is also no issue with that. Now after that, I will run it one more time. And this time I'm going to enter 69 and let us say minus 87. So it will display 69 is greater than minus 87. I'm going to run it one more time. And this time I'm going to enter minus 69 and then minus 85. And then if I hit the enter key, it will display minus 69 is greater than minus 85. So we will run it one more time, and this time we will enter the same numbers. For example, let us say minus 69 and then minus 69. And then it will display minus 69 is equal to minus 69. So here we can say this program is working. Now I want you guys to create another program. I want you guys to write a program which will say whether the number entered by the user is 0, positive number, or a negative number. Write that code, post it in the comment section. If you get any error, do let me know. In this video, we will see how we can write a C program in order to say whether the number entered by the user is a positive number, negative number, or 0. So here what I have done is I have created the main function, and then I have declared a variable called as number, and then I have used the printf function in order to ask the user to enter the number, and then I have used the scanf function and I have read the number entered by the user and I have stored that in this number variable. So now what we have to do is we have to say whether this number entered by the user, whether it is positive, negative, or 0. For that we will use the if, else if, and else, and here we will have if, and first we will check whether the number entered by the user is a positive number. So it will be number greater than 0. So we are checking whether the value present in this number variable is greater than 0. If it is true, then it means that the number entered by the user is a positive number. So here I will have the printf statement and I will say %d is a positive number. Now this is for the number which is greater than 0. Now what if the user is going to enter a number which is less than 0? For that we will have the else if block. So here we will have the condition as if the number is containing a value which is less than 0. In that case, it means that the number entered by the user is a negative number. So we will display that here. We will say %d is a negative number. Now here for this placeholder %d, we have to provide the value, and that will be the value present in this number variable. Now here this else if condition is checked only if the if condition fails. If the if condition is true, then the else if condition will not be checked. Now the next thing is we will have the else block. What if both of these conditions are not true? Number is not greater than 0 and it is not less than 0. It means that the number is 0. For that we will have the else block. We will use the printf statement and we will say %d is 0. And then we will refer the number variable. Okay, a simple program that we have written in here. Let us save this and let us run this. So in terminal it says enter the number. I'm going to enter minus 69. If I hit the enter key, it says minus 69 is a negative number. I will run it one more time, and this time I'm going to enter 69 and it says it is a positive number. I will run it one more time, and this time I will enter 0 and it says 0 is 0. So we can see that the program is working properly. In this tutorial, we will see how we can write a C program in order to find the largest of 3 numbers. So here we will have 3 numbers that will be entered by the user, and we have to display which one is the largest. Now in order to program this, what we will have is 3 numbers. So it will be num1, num2, and num3. So we have to say which one is the largest, and to solve this problem what we do is first we will create a variable and let us call it as largest, and we will say num1 is the largest number. Now after that what we have to do is we have to check whether this num2 is greater than this largest number. So we will check if num2 is greater than largest. If it is true, then we will say largest is num2, and then we will check if num3 is greater than largest. If it is so, we will say largest is equal to num3. With this method, we will go through the numbers one by one and we will say which is the largest. So once we have the largest number, by the end we will display that. Now for example, let us say num1 will contain a value of 10, num2 will contain, let us say 25, and num3 will contain 20. So here what we do is, first we will take a variable, let's call it as largest, and we will store num1 variable's value, which is equal to 10. After that, we will check whether the num2 variable is containing a value which is greater than the value present in this largest variable. In this case, largest variable is containing a value of 10 and num2 is containing a value which is greater than largest. So we will say largest is 25. Okay. After that, we will check whether the num3 variable is containing a value which is greater than the value present in this largest. In this case, num3 is containing 20, largest is containing 25, so it is not greater than 25. So we will display the largest value is present in this largest variable, which is 25. So let us see how we can write the program for this. Now here what I have done is I have created three variables, num1, num2 and num3, and then I have asked the user to enter three numbers, and then I have taken the input and I have stored them in this num1, num2 and num3. Now what we do is we will create a variable and let us call it as largest. And initially we will store a value of 0 in this. So the first thing that we do is we will assume that whatever the value that is present in this num1 variable, it is the largest value. For that we will say largest is equal to num1. Okay. Now we have to compare this largest value with num2 and num3 variables value. So we will do that by using the if conditional statement. So we will check whether the num2 variable is containing a value which is greater than the value present in this largest variable. If it is so, then we will say largest is the value that is present in this num2 variable. And after that, we have to check whether the num3 variable is containing a value which is greater than the value present in this largest. We will do that again here. So it will be if num3 is containing a value whether it is greater than the value present in this largest. In that case, we will say largest equal to num3. So once we perform these operations, the largest value will be present in this largest variable. So we can display that on the screen. So here we will use the printf statement and we will say largest is %d, and then we will display the value present in this largest. Okay, a simple program that we have written in here, and let us run this. Enter number 1 and number 2 and number 3. So I'm going to enter 20, then -69 and then +69. If I hit the enter key, it says largest is 69. Now I will run this program one more time, and this time I will enter -98 space -69, and then I'm going to enter let us say 125. If I hit the enter key in here, it says the largest is -69. Now I will run it one last time, and this time we will enter 99 and 88 and 77. And then it says the largest is 99. So here we can kind of say that this program is working properly. Now after this, I want you to write a program to find the smallest of three numbers. I want you guys to try that and post your code in the comment section. In this tutorial, we will see how we can write a C program in order to display the numbers from 1 to n. Now here what we do is we will ask the user to enter n. So user will enter a number, and then we will display the numbers starting from 1 up to n. Now what I have done is I have created a variable called as n. I have initialized it with a value of 0, and then I have asked the user to enter that, and I have read the user input and I have stored that in this variable n. So how we're going to write this program is we will have a loop which will iterate from 1 up to n. So here I will use the for loop. And in this for loop, we will have a loop counter variable. So let us say I, and we will initialize it with a value of 1. And the next thing is how long we want to run this for loop. We want to run this for loop until this I becomes a value which is greater than n. So we will write the condition as I less than or equal to n. So as long as I is containing a value which is less than or equal to n, we want to run this for loop. So when this I becomes greater than n, we will stop this. And then with every iteration, what we want to do, we want to increment the value of this I. So what this does is it allows us to execute some statements repeatedly. So here inside this for loop, what we want to do, we want to display the value present in this I variable. So we will use the printf function in here and we will display the value, and then I will insert a space. So here it will be I. So now if I save this program and if I run this, enter n, I'm gonna say 8. When I hit the enter key, it will display the numbers from 1 up to 8. Now I will run this program one more time, and this time I will enter, let us say, -8. Now what it will do? It will not run. The reason for that is the n variable will contain a value of -8, and this loop condition fails in its first test, and that's why the loop will fail. It will not execute the statements inside this block, not even once. Now here I want you guys to modify this program. I want you guys to display the numbers from a specific starting point up to a specific number. I want you guys to make that modification. So I want you guys to pause this video and make that modification and then continue with this. Okay, now I guess you guys have made this modification. Let us see how we can do this. So we will have the start number, and we will store a value of 0 in this, and then we will have end number, and again we will store a value of 0 in this, and then we will ask the user to enter start number and then end number. So the user will enter two numbers. So we will read two numbers in here. So it will be %d again 2 times, and then the first value will be for this start number and the second value is for the end number. So now how we can construct this loop? So here this loop is starting from 1, but we want it to start from start number. And the condition will be as long as this I variable will contain a value which is less than or equal to end number. Okay, we want to run this loop and we want to display the values. So I will save this program and I will run this. It will say enter the start number and then the end number. I'm going to enter, let us say 24 and then 36. If I hit the enter key, it will display from 24 up to 36. Now here, you guys can experiment with this code, try to display the numbers between different range. In this video, we will see how we can write a C program to calculate the factorial of a number entered by the user. So now the question is how we can find the factorial of a number. For example, let us say the user is going to enter the number 6. Now the factorial of 6 is denoted by like this, and it is actually equal to 6 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 1. Similarly, if you have to find the factorial of number 3, then it will be 3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 1. For the number 0, 0 factorial is equal to 1 and 1 factorial is actually equal to 1. Now one thing that we can see here is this number will become a huge number for a number like 15 or 20. So that is the one thing that you have to keep in mind. Now let us see how we can write a C program to calculate the factorial of a number. So here what I have done is I have written the main function, and then I have created a variable called as number, initialized it to 0, and then I am asking the user to enter the number to find the factorial, and then I'm reading that and storing in this number variable. The next thing that we're going to do here is we will declare a variable for storing the factorial value that we are going to calculate. Now here I'm going to go with unsigned long integer, and I will call this as factorial, and I will store a value of 1. Now here this unsigned long will by default be an integer, so we can ignore that. So now what we have to do is we have to calculate the factorial and we have to display that. So as I said before, depending on the number, we have to multiply the numbers starting from 1 up to that number. For that, we can use a loop. And in this example, we will use a for loop. So here we will have a variable for this loop counter and I will call it as I. And initially I will store a value of 1 in this. And then the condition will be how long we want to run this. It will depend on the number that the user has entered. So it will be I less than or equal to number. And then with every iteration, what we want to do, we want to increment the value of I. So here what we want to do, we want to multiply the value present in this factorial variable with the value that this I variable have in every iteration. So it will be factorial multiplied by I. And then what we want to do is we want to store this result back in this factorial variable. So it will be factorial equal to factorial multiplied by I. We can write this in a shorter form, which will look something like this. Factorial multiply equal to I. So this is same as factorial equal to factorial multiplied by I. So if the user is going to enter, let us say the number 3, then 3 factorial will be equal to 3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 1. In order to compute that, what we are doing is with every iteration of this for loop, we are multiplying the value present in this factorial variable by the value of this I, and then we are storing that back in this factorial variable. So for the first iteration, it will be 1. Factorial is containing 1. So 1 multiplied by 1, which is equal to 1, and that is stored in this factorial. For the second iteration, I will contain 2. And now factorial is containing 1. 1 multiplied by 2, which is equal to 2, and that is stored in this factorial. For the next iteration, I will contain 3, and it will be 3 multiplied by 2, which is already present in this factorial, which is equal to 6. And after that, if the user has entered the number as 3, the loop will stop and we will have the factorial value in this factorial variable. So after this here, outside the for loop, we can have the printf statement and we can display %d factorial symbol equal to %LLU. That's because the factorial variable is of type unsigned long integer. And here we will provide the values. First one is the number and the second one is the value present in this factorial variable. So now if I save this program and if I run this, it will say enter a number to find the factorial. I will enter, let us say 3. It will say 3 factorial equal to 6. I will run it one more time and this time I will enter 0 and it will say 0 factorial equal to 1. I will run it one more time and this time I will enter 1 and it will display 1 factorial equal to 1. Now the next thing that we're going to talk about here, this loop counter is starting from 1 and inside this loop we are multiplying the factorial variable's value by 1 when this I is containing 1. That is actually not needed because multiplying by 1 will not change the value. So what we can do is we can start from 2 here. In that way, we can reduce this calculation. Now, the next thing is this factorial value can become a huge number for the small inputs like 21 or 22. I think this unsigned long can contain the factorial of a number up to 20. I'm not really sure, but I think it is somewhere around there. So if the user is going to enter a number which is, beyond that, let us say 30 or something, the factorial value will be so large and we can't store that in this unsigned long variable that we have in this example. So that is one thing that you have to understand. Now here, what we can do is we can have a check. For example, we can check the value entered by the user, which is present in this number variable, if it is less than 0, or if the number entered by the user is greater than 20, then what we can do is we can display a message and terminate the program and do not calculate this factorial. So here in this case, I'm going to say printf number needs to be between 0 and 20. Okay, something like this. And after that, what we want to do is we want to return 0. We don't want to go to this for loop. Now, if I save and run this program, And if I enter a number, let us say -7, it says number needs to be between 0 and 20 and the program terminates. Similarly, if I run it one more time and if I enter a number, something like 50, it will say number needs to be between 0 and 20. In this tutorial, we will see how we can write a C program in order to check whether a number is a prime number or a composite number. Now, a prime number is a number which is greater than 1 and it has exactly two positive divisors, 1 and the number itself. If a number is greater than 1 and if it is not a prime number, then we can say that that number is a composite number. Now, the numbers 0 and 1 are neither prime nor composite, and the negative numbers also not considered either prime or composite. So here, let us see how we can write a program in order to find whether the number entered by the user is a prime number or a composite number. Now, in order to explain this, what I have done is I have created this main function. I have created a variable called as number, initialized it with a value of 0, and then I'm asking the user to enter this number. If the number that is entered by the user is less than or equal to 1, we are displaying this particular message stating that it is neither prime nor composite, and then we are terminating the program. Now, if the number entered by the user is greater than 1, then we have to check whether it is prime or composite, and we have to display a message. We can say a number is a prime number if it is greater than 1 and it has exactly two positive divisors, 1 and the number itself. If this number is greater than 1 and if it has any other positive divisors other than 1 and the number itself, then it is a composite number. Now the question is how we can programmatically say whether this is prime or composite. So what we do is we start to find the divisors of this number. For example, let us say the user is going to enter the number 36. So what we do is we start from 2, we go up to certain number, and we will find whether any of them is a divisor of this number 36. Now the question is how long we have to go here. Do we have to go from 2 to 36 or whether we have to go from 2 to 18? And actually here we can go from 2 up to square root of this number. In this case it will be square root of this number 36. Why is that? So when we have this number 36, it can be expressed in terms of, a multiplied by b, which is equal to b multiplied by a. What I mean by that is 36, we can write 1 multiplied by 36, which is equal to 36 multiplied by 1. So we can express it in the form of a multiplied by b. So here for this number 36, let us try to find out the divisors. So I can write this 36 as 1 multiplied by 36, 2 multiplied by 18, 3 multiplied by 12, 4 multiplied by 9, 6 multiplied by 6, and then 9 multiplied by 4, and then 12 multiplied by 3, then 18 multiplied by 2, and then 36 multiplied by 1. So here the important thing is after some level, the numbers will start to repeat in other side. For example, in the left hand side here, I have written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And after this number 6, in the other side, the numbers repeat. For example, you guys can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this 6 is actually the square root of this number. So square root of this 36. So we can start from 2 in order to find the divisors, and we can move up to the square root of this number. So it will be 36, and in this case it will be 6. So after this 6, we don't have to check. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna write this program now. So we will take a for loop, and we will start from 2 int I equal to 2, and then we will write I less than or equal to, and then we can find the square root of the number that the user has entered, or we can write it in another way, which is nothing but, let us say I have to write the condition as I less than or equal to square root of number. Now I can write it another way as I square less than or equal to num. So we can write in this way also. So here, instead of finding out the square root, we will write the code in this way. Why? In order to find the square root, we have to use a mathematical library function, but we don't want to do that. So here the condition will be I multiplied by I, that is I square, is less than the number itself. So it will be number. And then we will increment the value of this I. So now what we can do is we can check whether this I is a divisor of this number. And we can do that by using the if conditional statement and by using the modulus operator. So we will perform number modulus operator I, and we will check this value whether it is equal to 0. If it is 0, then it means that we have found a number other than 1 and the number itself, which is a divisor of this number. That means this number is not prime, it is a composite number. So what we can do is we can use the printf function in here, and we can say %d is a composite number. And once we know that this number is not prime and it is a composite number, what we do is we will return 0. In other words, we will terminate this program after displaying this message. Now what if we don't find any number between 2 and the square root of this number, which is a divisor for the number entered by the user? In that case, this particular condition will not be true. So the for loop will terminate. And when the for loop terminates, if we come here in this particular part, then we can say by using the printf function that the number is a prime number. And here I have to provide the value for this placeholder and also here. Okay. So now in this loop, if we find a number which is a divisor for this number entered by the user, then what we do is we will display this message and then we will immediately terminate the program, because the whole purpose of this program is to display whether the number entered by the user is prime or composite. Once we do that, we don't have to do anything else. We will terminate the program. Okay. Now let us see what happens when we run this. So here it says enter the number in order to find whether it is prime or composite. I'm going to enter 36. It says 36 is a composite number because it has divisors other than 1 and itself. So it is a composite number. Now I will run it one more time. And this time I'm going to enter 37. And it says it is a prime number. Now I will run it one more time. And this time I'm going to enter, let us say 1. In this case, it says neither prime nor composite. So this is it for this particular video. If you like it, hit the like button. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. If you have anything to say, write that in the comment box. For more tutorials, subscribe to the channel.